How is this? Is fresh batch.
Let's do a bit more energy. So,
no, hold on a minute.
Hey!
Get you do it.
No.
Welcome to the Fresh Batch Pod. I can't say that fast. The Fresh Batch Podcast.
Welcome to the Fresh Batch Podcast. Don't say Fresh Batch loaf to Dean because he wants to loaf you in the head if you say it.
Here, fuck off, will you? Fresh, yeah?
Episode 5, the Fresh Batch Podcast, and we're joined by another guest, Social Affairs Correspondent Kitty Holland from the Irish Times. What's the difference between a correspondent and a journalist?
A teeny bit more money, like an extra 50 quid a month or something like that.
You have a gig, don't you? If you're
You
a
have a
correspondent.
beat, yeah, you have a beat. My beat is social affairs.
Did they come looking for you or did you go looking for them?
Well, they needed a social affairs correspondent. They hadn't had one for a few years. It's part of the mission of the Irish Times Trust is to cover marginalised communities and human rights and all the glamorous stuff. Everything from the real lived experiences to the policies to cultural changes and everything that impact on society, I suppose, generally looked at from the perspective of more marginalised communities. And that could be people with mental health issues, immigrants, people living in poverty, people living in housing distress, children, women, travellers, anyone who's not a white man, basically. Middle-class white man.
Oh, very good. So why don't you just call it the not white man correspondent?
Yeah.
Because we were talking about something earlier on about open drug dealing, say somewhere in Ballymun, right? And you were talking about, is it Ranelagh, Rathmines?
Ranelagh, Rathmines, Dublin 6, yeah.
That area where all the white collar crime is. And I thought, on balance, RTE or whoever made that Crack in the Community documentary Ballymun should have actually went to Cabinteely and done coke in Cabinteely.
Yeah.
As a balanced kind of thing.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because pound for pound or euro for euro, there's probably more cocaine being sold in white middle class.
There's probably more money being spent. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
Definitely on drugs and substances that put you out of your mind in middle class areas than there is in kind of poorer communities, because in middle class areas you can afford to buy a €50 bottle of gin, whereas in other areas I'd say you're looking at the bottom shelf and for the cheaper bottle of vodka.
The fivers, yeah.
The fiver, yeah. So, you know, euro for euro, there's probably more being spent.
Addiction doesn't choose class. It doesn't.
No, I'm not talking about addiction. That's a next kind of level to it. I'm just talking about the recreational spend in Ireland is proportionately larger in the white middle class
I'd say
male
so.
section.
Yeah.
Just to tell you, Dave, it's the same thing. What I think about, we say, my recovery, right? I never ever drank with gentlemen or ladies drinkers. Ever. Never ever went anywhere where people had a sherry and went home. In this country, I think it's an epidemic with the way we drink. You know, like I was at Ivy Gardens last week, like, you know what I mean? And when we were walking out, you know, I always think about the whole dumping thing, you know, and people say, oh, dumping is terrible. But they've no problem drinking 5 drinks in the Ivy Gardens and throwing the cups onto the ground and sure somebody else will pick them up, like, you know, or in the cinema or all that kind of stuff. But I was looking at the amount of cups and we were walking through a sea of cups, you know, and I was thinking, if you were to have the Ivy Gardens on with an act and there was no alcohol there, would people show up?
The tickets would be €150.
Okay. But people are getting absolutely out of their banana. And it's the same with the coke. It's the same in Rathmines. It's the same level of addiction. It's the same level of use across the board. It doesn't choose where you come from.
No, but my point on it was when they done that documentary in Ballymun, one of the headlines was, there's this amount of monetary transactions happening. And I just thought, yeah, but it must be more in white middle class.
And it's probably happening a lot of it in off licenses, you know, for on really nice bottles of stuff that cost an awful lot of money.
Cocaine as well.
And really nice cocaine.
And you see, when you look at, we say RTE, they have that little program, Queuing for a Living. I used to be kind of thinking, like, you'd have your man there asking people the most intimate and personal details about their lives, like, you know. And I remember him one day asking people just really, really kind of personal stuff, like, you know. And I was like, why don't they queue outside the court up in Rathmines about...
Poor old Rathmines. We're giving it an awful time.
Yeah, we've got enough bleeding slaughter on this side
Let's
of the border.
We
always say Fox. We always say, what there? Sutton or whatever. There probably is no court up there. Like, I think you're articles are very balanced, right? They are, and and interesting and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not just saying that because you're here, but when I look at the likes of RT and all that kind of stuff, it sensationalizes the drug stuff, the dawns and all that kind of stuff. Like, you know what I mean? It's always the general, it's kind of mad.
There's a huge appetite for it, though. It's kind of almost like soap opera entertainment. Like there is a huge appetite for all that.
I recently done a piece for Sky called Narcos Dublin. Yeah. Me and Noreen O'Sullivan.
Yeah, very good.
It was good. It was good thing.
Lynn Moran, it was in it, and all the type of stuff. They didn't have that perspective. They were going, "What's the story?" You know what I mean? And they weren't too interested in that.
Yeah, but you said it.
Although they eventually leaned towards some of that.
But you said it on the show. Like, you were like, what's the difference going to be between people sculling loads of points and people sculling loads of heroin? It's the same thing. It's it's emotional regulation. It's trying to get out of yourself.
And what's the difference between working class people doing it or middle class people doing it? Or what's the difference between working class gangsters and the white collar crime gangsters? I think the difference is that the white collar stuff is business as usual, and it's billions, where the lads that we see banging around here, on motorbikes and all that, it's a couple of grand, it's 100 grand, it's 200 grand.
It's not even that.
Across all of them. If you add them all up, what one dude is making on the stock exchange, while he's asleep at 3 o'clock in the morning, these lads involved in kind of that more working class crime, it's pittance like.
Like, you see people get locked up. Like, there was a guy locked up there for something to do with planning permission there recently, like, and I think he was released. It was appealed, like, so he's not even in jail, right? But you will always hear that the system favours criminals, right? But, like, if you go into Mountjoy, like, on Philly's programme and all that kind of stuff, there's nobody in there. There wasn't, like, loads of people in there for white collar crime. I didn't come across any, to be honest.
We're saying something like 96% is from areas like this or whatever.
And to do with drugs.
And to do with poverty, and to do with trauma.
Absolutely.
And that's so much of the drugs is actually painkiller, it's self-medicating. Yeah. If you go and look, if you look at the stats of the kids in Oberstown, I haven't looked at the latest ones, but I remember doing a piece a few years ago about the kids in Oberstown. Sizable percentage of them, at least one of their parents was dead. Yeah. At least one of their parents was in prison. Most of them suffered like serious trauma in their lives, and most of that trauma comes from poverty and from, trauma begets more trauma.
Yeah, and it's the cumulative effects over time rather than we just have less money than you.
Yeah.
That's not the reality. The reality is that that's not the thing. It's not that we have less money. It's the cumulative effects of poverty over time in the community.
And poverty creates mental health problems because people are stressed about not having enough money and not being able to access, you need money in this country to get decent services because, the public services are crap, let's face it. So if you have any kind of disposable cash that will allow you to buy health insurance, to bypass, perhaps not a great education system and get your kids grinds, to pay exorbitant rents or buy a house, you need money to get past the fact that we have crap social housing, supply of social housing, a health service is not fit for purposes, disability service for kids. If you've got a disabled kid, you have to have money to access the service. So if you don't have money, you are dependent on all that public service, which is not fit for purpose. So the amount of stress that causes in families. And how do people deal with stress? Some will have a drink, some will have, all that kind. And I'm not saying everyone who's, lacking money is going to end up taking drugs. Far from it. The vast majority struggle through heroically and do the very best and make all the sacrifices they need to look after their kids properly. But, if you are poor, you are more vulnerable to trauma and to stress and to mental health issues and to all the stuff that leads from that, which makes those communities more susceptible to crime.
Or a specific type of crime or a specific type of drug taking.
And more susceptible and at risk of ending up getting involved with the local gangs, or the local... One of the ways
that it showed me was, here's how I came to know about Kitty Holland. In February 2016, there was an article that said that 70% of all the homeless people in Dublin came from a corner of Dublin between Ballymun and Blanchardstown. And that blew my fucking mind.
The Black Arch, they call it.
Which was Joan Burton's and Leo Varadkar's constituency at the time.
They also call it the K.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But it's the Black Arch. If you look it up, there was a report done, because when I was a councillor, that's what it was called.
And it reminded me of Baltimore.
Oh, yeah.
Because they have a thing in Baltimore. They've done a research piece and they call theirs the butterfly. So there's a map of a socio-economic map to show that anybody inside the butterfly was of a certain socio-economic background, poor, black, working class.
Well, the real divide in Dublin is not north-south, really. It's east-west.
It's east-west, yeah.
So along the coast, along the east-west, you're going down from Malahide, Sutton, through down to Sandymount, Clontarf,
there's exceptions along the way.
There are exceptions along the way. But then west, you've got Blanchardstown, Tala, Jobstown, Clondalk, and just
we know our Tala brothers and sisters are like Northsiders to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With the same experience.
Yeah.
So that's how I would have come across you, and it blew my mind. And Focus Ireland done the report if anybody wants to look at it, and that's the thing that kind of prompted me to take action, to occupy a building. And then I came across you again because we reached out to you to say, we have this thing that we're going to do. We're not going to tell anybody else really in the country because we don't want to be limited by the glass ceiling of Irish journalism. We're going to tell the New York Times and BBC and Al Jazeera, but we would like you to break the story. And here it is.
That was Apollo House.
Yeah, it was Apollo House.
Yeah.
And your office is directly across.
So it's very handy. I could just nip back to the office and write it up after you'd gone in that night. Yeah, so that was about midnight. And we had it up on the website then, but like 2 a.m. And
so we went in at about 7, probably 8 o'clock. I have it in my notes somewhere. And then we would have sent a story across. But just before that, there was a leak because one of the stars from Love Hay had sent it out on Facebook going, Dino and Damo and the lads are taking over a building. And I had to go, delete.
Yeah.
Kitty has the story, don't tell anyone yet. But I just want to say thank you very much because I didn't know any journalist from anybody and I didn't know whether to trust them or not trust them. And people were saying to me, no, this is the one you can trust.
I was Dave Gibney from Mandate at the time, because he was involved in the water charges campaign. So he met me, I think the day before and said, just to let you know.
And I realised the potential power of journalism because before that, in my head, I would have gone, fuck the journalists, you know what I mean? Fuck the newspapers. It's all shite anyway. But you were that kind of beacon for what we were doing.
Yeah. But I mean, the journalism is a very privileged position to be in, because it is a huge platform and you can't abuse it, and...
How did you get into it?
Both my parents were journalists. I know that's like, so it's like both my parents were doctors, but like both my parents and a bit of a lack of imagination. But I suppose I could see it was a very interesting job. So my dad's Eamon McCann and he was very involved in civil rights politics.
Yeah, he would have been my introduction to politics when I was a kid because I would have bought Hot Press religiously, and I didn't know what politics was, but I always remember when I read Eamon McCann, I was always going, he's dead right. That is dead what he's saying.
And I've met him. I was up in Derry. I'm not sure if it was with Dave or Brendan or something like that. And we showed the Apollo House documentary during the Bloody Sunday stuff that was going on. And
they have it every year, the anniversary.
I would have met your dad and Bernadette and a few of those people.
Yeah, so that's my mother is Mary Holland. She's died in 2004. She would have covered the Northern Ireland. So that was her whole career from before she covered Northern Ireland, she was kind of covering different news, but she worked for the Observer in London and she went over in 1968 to kind of look what was happening there just as it was all flaring up. And that's actually where she met my dad. So they both always had a very keen belief in social justice and making sure the voice of the unheard communities are heard, So I kind of, I suppose, watched out. That's what I was kind of reared on, So then when I finished college, I did history and politics and kind of did my final exams and went, I'm unemployed now and I haven't a clue what I'm going to do. But I had done a bit of journalism in college and thought I'll go on to try and get into that.
What I'm interested in is how can me and Sparky as two working class community people develop a relationship with somebody like you across time so it benefits not only our community, but Irish society in general. I think that's a really interesting thing. Yeah. And you have that privileged position. We also have a privileged position in this community as well. And I think we'd be remiss not to use it, not to maximise the potential opportunities there. Yeah, just for the benefit of society. People
are so busy and they have a very kind of blinkered view often of worldview, which is kind of informed by their childhoods and informed by their families and informed by their social milieu. So I do think that people like you and me have a a duty might be putting it too highly, but it's kind of a duty to sort of say, we've got this platform to say, actually, there are other perspectives and there are other voices. And I really see that as what I like to do. Like, I really enjoy doing it, going out and talking to people and bringing back their voices to, the pages of the Irish Times and sort of saying, it's too easy to malign communities and say the far right protests, to just look at people who are kind of protesting outside an asylum centre and say, it's very easy to sit in a middle class area and go, oh God, they're all horrible, racist working class people. Look at them, So, people like me, I feel, have to go in and say, look, what are your concerns? What are you worried about? Like, I was out in Ballybrack, as I was saying earlier, the other day, and so there were only, say, 100 people outside that place, but they were mainly women and kids. It wasn't kind of angry men. It was mainly women and kids, and they were genuinely concerned. And some of the stuff they were saying, like military age men, and I'm worried about safety in the community, you are kind of going, God, it's kind of not very informed, kind of, but that is what they're worried about, and they have heard that somewhere and they are repeating it. And we have to interact with people and kind of go, well, why are you concerned about that? And is it real? And I was kind of saying to a few of them, like, what are you really concerned about? But they genuinely are feeling, my 12-year-old daughter is not going to be safe going out here if, 60 men from another country move in. And you can kind of understand that, so that means there has to be engagement. And what was really missing from the 100 people, there was no one there from any of the political parties. Now, they might have been rounded on, but there was no one there from any political parties. There was no one there from local authority. There was no one there actually going in and going, look, listen, what are you concerned about? So they were there on their own, scared. And I actually think that's a failure of other people. It's others, of all the political parties. There was no one there from Sinn Féin or People Before Profit. I think they should have been there. Now, they might have been feckin' lynched, but they should have been there.
Lynched. Yeah, but I remember going down to Pearse Street, that area, a few weeks ago. Afterwards, there was a couple of tents burnt down and so on. Yeah. And I went down because I thought there's something more here than just let's blame those poor working class people or those black people, or let's start blaming people. There's connections and stories and fears and realities. And
there's change. People are scared of change, so people need guidance and leadership and a little bit of, the correct information. Otherwise, they'll turn to Facebook, which they do.
Absolutely. And then there's also the other part of what you do, because right now you're in the middle of the Star Dust inquiry, and there's stories that are difficult that need to be handled properly. There's
48 inquests going on at the moment. They started in kind of March, April. They'll run until at least Christmas. They're on a break at the moment. But the Star Dust is probably one of the biggest class-based crimes that ever happened, scandals that happened in this country. I mean, obviously there was the Magdalene laundries and the institutional, but in terms of an event and the way it was handled and the victims and their families were treated in the intervening 42 years is one of the biggest scandals in the history of the state.
My man and dad were in there that night.
Yeah.
And they would have known, my dad would have ran a women's football team at the time, and a couple of the women from the team died. There was a couple of neighbours, and we have family in Whitehall, and there was a couple of people from Whitehall. There was actually a man in there that night with my dad. They were with the Marine Port and General Workers Union, and he was the porter, and his son worked as a chef, and he was saying when they get out, he said, thanks be to God my young fella's not in there, but he was at there swapping a shift with his friend, and he had his clothes, he had his friend, that's how they identified the body, was he had his friend's clothes on.
Do you know the name of the young man who died?
Hobbs,
yeah.
Yeah.
Brian Hobbs.
Yeah, Brian, yeah.
You would have done biography, is that the right word? About each person? Yeah,
so at the beginning of the, before the actual evidence started, they spent a month doing what they call pen portraits, where family members or friends, like in one or two cases, there was no family left to do the pen portrait, or the only person left was too elderly and frail. Like Christy Moore did one of them, because the mother she just couldn't face doing it. But they did these almost like a victim impact statement, but they were so they were like a little biography, as you say, of the person, and they were like, of the 48, 10 of them were under the age of 18, like 10 of them were children, so, they did these pen portraits, which were just so powerful. They were just so powerful.
My cousins were there, and they were, as you say, they were like children when they were there.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a person on the north side of the city that hasn't been
affected,
by it.
Yeah.
So
it's very moving. Yeah.
And I think my parents were very, very traumatized by it.
Yeah. No, I'd be nearly in tears because if I was to start getting into some of the pen portraits, it's 42 years. You could see how much some of those families had to dig deep into themselves to get through those pen portraits. They were so moving. Because
I remember them. I remember listening to them, but
and they were the love that, like, it goes without saying, but the love there was still, like, and the trauma, like the impact on what really struck me from them was younger siblings and fathers, the impact on them, just like obviously on mothers as well and older siblings. But there's a sense that a lot of the mothers just had to keep going, like, because, you know, in most of the families there was at least 5, if not 10, you know, other siblings to look after. But the impact on fathers was just devastating, like, you know, and younger siblings.
When you look at, like, Christie wrote a song about it and they banned it.
Yeah, he ended up in court.
You know, and then all those inquiries that really amounted to nothing, like, you know what I mean? And everybody else seemed to do well, you know, everybody kind of done okay, you know, except the families.
The people who owned it got compensation.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
The Bushley family.
Reminds me of the bleeding French, was it? They got compensated for Haiti. Let's do this right. As a country, let's do this one right.
Yeah. Well, I think the inquests, you know, they will be, it's a process that the families trust. And they are looking at all the evidence fresh. So it's like a brand new, whereas the other kind of reviews, which was like the Paul Coffey review in 2008. And then there was the McCartan one in about, I think 2012, or maybe, I can't remember the year exactly, but they were kind of looking at new evidence to see if there was any new stuff to find out or whether it was worth having an inquiry. Whereas these inquests are going to be, they're a whole brand new process. They're looking at everything fresh. They've got the coroner, Dr. Myra Cullinan, who's very committed to, she has said, the lives of the 48 people must be vindicated. And that's very specific legal language, which is, you know, the right to life has to be vindicated. And that's from the European Convention of Human Rights. And that means that they must look at the circumstances and everything around the deaths to see where there were lapses, let's say, without kind of wanting to apportion blame. And, you know, from that, there may be more proceedings down the line. But yeah, I think it's finally going to bring a sense of closure, which is, you know, it's the pain of not knowing, isn't it? It's the disrespect of being told to go away and get on with your lives. It's, you know, just the way the families were treated from the get-go. Like, they weren't even allowed to choose when the funerals were going to be. They were told which funeral homes they were going to be used. They were told whether they could have an open coffin or not. You know, they were just told, you know, you're a working class community, you have loads of kids, go away, shut up and forget about it, basically.
Yeah. When you look at, you know, like you said about if it's a working class, it's a complete, you know, tragedy, you know, but then you look at all the other things that's going on, like I was listening to about the Tune Babies there, like, you know, when you're like
Carrickmines.
Yeah.
Carrickmines, yeah, you have
10th anniversary.
I think
in a few years.
Carrickmines might have possibly been forgotten about in the psyche of people who are not travellers in this country.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. It's a shame. It's a mad reality.
I actually keep thinking I must go back to Josie, you know, the mother there was Josie and Tom Connors, and it was their son who was married to, I can't remember her name now. See, there you go. But they lost a lot, and she is now widowed with bringing up the grandchildren and living in a halting site, which isn't great. And
without diminishing the Stardust, Carrickmines could be the Stardust for the travelling community.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking about when I met those families.
Yeah.
I think the same response, go away.
And the thing is, yeah, there's only those two families, and for the, you know, they don't really have the energy. They don't clearly have the energy to have campaigned for truth and justice. And
yeah, and that's the privilege that we have.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I'm interested in doing. And that's why I met you a few weeks ago to talk about asylum seekers, refugees, and legitimate fears and concerns of working class people in areas like Ballymun in that regard.
Yeah.
So let's continue to do that. Let's keep on doing it. Let's keep on doing what we're doing. And let's realise the privilege that we have and the potential work that we can do together.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll always say, like, I have, I do have this very privileged position, given that I come from a middle class family. I had all the privileges of like going to college and just expecting I was going to go to college and get a degree and then get a job in a middle class bastion establishment organisation, like the Irish Times.
As a correspondent.
And I'll always say, like, I don't know what's best for working class communities. I don't know what's best for travel. They know, and I will always feel you give people the voice because they have the intellectual interpretation of what's going on for them and how to articulate what's best for them. And, all I can do is kind of say, put a mic in front of them and say, you tell us, Yeah,
well, let's keep on doing it. And we'll fill your pages, or we'll help fill your pages from those communities.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
that's our skill, that's our privilege, people like myself and Sparky.
Yeah, okay.
I was in a cafe and the person behind the counter sneezed into the food, right? So this is what happened to me, right? My first thing was to say something, right? And then I'm thinking, well, I'm not eating that stuff, so it doesn't really matter to me, right? So then I didn't complain. I didn't say anything. I just got me coffee and legged it. But all day I was thinking, somebody had to, somebody ate that, like, so. And I was just thinking about the whole Irish thing about we hate complaining, you know what I mean? Like, but yet there's loads of people, like, I was out swimming yesterday and I was out with a group of kids yesterday and we had our towels everywhere. And this woman came along and she lifted all our towels off the ground, right? And one of the lads said, call her. And I said, lads, relax now. But so some people do complain. Like, some people have no problem complaining and making that kind of thing. But I definitely don't like complaining.
I just thinking when I'm out with different people and I complain, they just go, "Oh, you shut the fuck up."
Now, I used to go out with a friend of mine who she said if you're paying that much for food, you should get the thing. Whereas I always think that's going back inside and it's getting booted around the kitchen, which it probably isn't. Like, your steak is kind of not done enough.
Oh yeah, yeah. And you say my steak or whatever.
yeah. But I don't know whether that's just part of the psychology of not wanting to, but that Irish, I don't know whether it's an Irish thing, but of not wanting to complain.
I think if you've worked in the service industries at all, you just don't want to be that person as well. Like, because I worked as a waitress like so many times in my youth. And some people who complained, everyone would like, here's another one. And you just don't want to be that person. Yeah, and I actually think as well, it's harder as a middle-aged woman to complain because you don't want to be the Karen in the room,
That's what the
there is a sexism about it.
But that's what the young fella called the woman yesterday. Yeah, Karen, put me towel down. And I was like, lads.
That label is very effective, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it silences middle-aged women,
Does it? Yeah. Look, I'm not a middle-aged woman. I'm a middle-aged man. So I wouldn't have that perspective. So from your perspective.
I would be reluctant to complain. Whereas I think, and where there's valid reason like that, someone sneezed all over the next customer's food, you kind of want to go, But I would probably do it very apologetically and go, look, and I'd also be conscious that they're probably on a real bad wage, the person you're complaining to.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
So you're kind of going,
probably on
they're probably going to get into trouble, and so
trying to mind them
and go. They're probably So it is difficult. The whole world of complaining. There's kind of people who feel entitled to complain, and then other people who are kind of feeling that they have more solidarity with the person they're complaining to than maybe their boss.
I tell you when I do complain, right? So if somebody makes a complaint to me, I always have a complaint. Like, I'll give you an example. I was part of a program last week, and there was a complaint about the group that I brought with me, And while the group were taking part in the activity, one of the workers was using bad language towards them, So I said nothing. And then your man said, "Can I have a word with you?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Look, the behaviour, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Yeah. And by the way, that fella with the sunglasses, he was using bad language." And
so you're trying to knock the edge off the complaint against you with a complaint against them?
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's passive aggressive, isn't it?
I don't enjoy it, but I don't probably do enjoy it when people give out to me, you done this and that, and I'm like, deadly, because then one is you're not carrying that shit around now.
Yeah.
And I've something about me that I can like tweak a little bit. You know what I mean? And
yeah, so, God, that's very mature of you.
And I'm almost going to them. I know it is. It's weird though. And I'm almost going to them. Thanks very much. Thanks for that. Because to use a bleeding wanky phrase, we all grow from that.
We do. Yeah, absolutely.
Man, what's a sugar lumps for me?
I remember when I was a politician back in...
You were a politician, right?
I was a councillor for this area. During the regeneration, I kind of felt that there wasn't a voice for locals. But yeah, so I remember, I don't know whether it was ego. I think there could have been a bit of ego in it, but there was definitely, I felt there wasn't a voice for locals on the regeneration. So I put myself forward with Sinn Féin and I got elected.
You up the shinners.
And yeah, so it was a weird one because up to the day I was elected, I was like a local hero and everybody, vote Sparky #1, yup, vote for Ray and all this kind of stuff. And then the next day I was just a politician and I was like dirt on people's feet. Like, it was weird.
You were just that rag that people could just fucking spew on. Go, see him, bastard. One day they're going, Sparky, any chance you could get my young into A, B and Z? The next day, see you.
Yeah, and then there was even with mates, like there was friends that like I was friends with since I was a kid, like, and they'd say to me, would you get me daughter a house? And I'm like, that just doesn't exist anymore. Like, and then it was like, they didn't speak to me for 5 years, you know? So it was weird. It was a weird one.
Like, did you do something with the platform you had that people appreciated? Like, did you bring a voice?
I certainly did the best I could at the time, right? And there was a regeneration and there was loads of stuff going on. There was a lot of pandering to the communities on the perimeter, okay? And where they were all appeased with walls and, you know, there was laneways extinguished and all that kind of stuff. And there was like, I remember there was one, anyhow, that comes into my mind is that up in Poppentry Park, there was changing rooms over on the other side, what we call Poshland, right? And, but over on that side, there was changing rooms for the kids there, like, you know what I mean? And there was none on our side, you know? And I remember saying it out loud at a meeting. So the story goes, the kids from that side of the park will have hot showers, whereas the kids from this side will have to go home in their gear, like, you know.
And could the kids on your side not go and use those changing rooms?
No, because it was it wasn't public. Now those public showers, or those showers are open now. And that was kind of, and there's loads of little fights, like, you know what I mean? But I felt, one, there was a strain on me, there was a strain on my family. You know, I remember my dad, you know, ringing me and saying, I'm about to get a phone call from so-and-so, and, you know, I'm sure you understand that. Would you understand that with your dad, or? Well,
so my dad lives in Derry, and he was a councillor for a while. He was an MLA as well, a member of the Legislative Assembly in Stormont. But I wasn't there to see, you know, and I think there were people coming around looking to get passports sorted and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But all those little fights, particularly for things like playgrounds and cleaning up dog poo or whatever, you know, the things, but they really matter to the people. You know, they matter much more than, you know, whether the health service has been sorted out, you know, those things on people's doorsteps.
Or whether, like, what I know was I watched the programme and your dad was in it, like, you know, and there was all this big talk about, you know, the 1960s and the Bloody Sunday, all that kind of stuff, right? There was all that talk about that. But he was on the phone in the office and there was somebody trying to get a visit for a prisoner. Yeah. You know, I remember that. I was like, that's the kind of stuff that I had to do on a daily basis, like, you know what I mean? That would just go unseen and unheard and all that kind of stuff. And then you were only as good as your last interaction. You know what I mean? So if you had got people, you know, sewage and all that kind of stuff sorted out, you know, you would have made calls or whatever the thing it was, you were sound. But if you didn't get the papers picked up off the green on a Thursday, you were like dirt, like, you know, it was horrible. And then the bullying, this was around the beginning of Facebook and all that kind of stuff. So that was starting to creep in, you know, and it wasn't so much on me because I learned how to block people very, very quickly. But there was another politician in the area who got absolutely slaughtered, you know, and even since then, there's another politician, and particularly female politicians, are absolutely I don't know how they do it. I honestly don't know why a woman in this country would take up that role.
Yeah, no, I've heard. I've heard. Oh, we'll name the councillor around here who gets an awful lot, Nolene O'Reilly. Like I haven't spoken to her about it, but I hear she just gets absolute, constant, really misogynistic, violent, awful abuse, and she's Ballymun through and through. Like she lives and breathes. She's a sterling councillor.
She's absolutely on the ball. Like in terms of legislative stuff, all this, all the statute stuff, she's absolutely top of the pops. Locally, she's at the end of the phone, like, you know what I mean? And she will work. But for some reason, all that misogynistic, crazy stuff just becomes part of the norm or part of the, and it's weird.
And is it like that Karen stuff?
Oh, it is. Yeah, no, I think there's a real, for all our kind of progress for women and, repealing the 8th Amendment and, equality in the workplace in theory and, better childcare and everything, there's a deep misogyny in Ireland, and there's a hatred among some, or even a kind of antagonism towards women having a voice and being articulate and being educated. And
so the obvious part of that is
to slap them down by insulting them sexually.
The day in that, the other side in that is the men.
Women too, though.
Women too, okay.
Yeah, women are very critical of women.
I wouldn't see it.
I think women are very critical of women. Even sometimes myself, I find myself looking at the newsreader and going, what is she wearing? And I catch myself and go, oh my God, like, I'm being exactly what I give out about,
But
we can't help it.
What do you mean you can't help it, Kitty?
We are so cultured or socialised from infants, men and women, to be very, to have a role for women in our psychology, which, intellectually we're totally breaking out of, and we are progressing. And, if you ask anyone on the street, we absolutely believe women should have all the same rights as men. But there is a sort of like, if a woman gets a powerful job, one of the first things she's asked is who's going to mind the children, and that does flash through people's heads.
But that's not doing it to yourself. That's, you know what I mean?
Well, it is kind of doing, because we do, like, as women, we take on all the childcare stuff without even really, kind of saying, well, then we go, oh, well, actually, I shouldn't have to do 90% of it, where, we do it anyway, and that's, as a result, even the research on who gets more sleep, women get less sleep than men, like, the world over, because we do more.
My girlfriend will attest to that, 100%. Yeah. I'm 9-10 hours a day.
At that most basic level, women get less sleep than men.
Wow.
But that thing that you're talking about, looking at the news,
and we do it to ourselves. But we do it to ourselves because society breeds us, socialises us to do it to ourselves. It's not like we set out.
The message from today's podcast is, ladies, stay in bed.
Well, certainly kind of think about how you're being oppressed by the system, but because
we're straight in with the female oppression here.
Yeah, but like it's rigged against women. It is the system just from birth, and we have to fight against that all the time. And the danger of slippage is always there, like as we see in America, getting into the big macro issues. But the way abortion rights have been rolled back, we think we've repealed the 8th here, and we need more progress on, getting rid of protests outside GP surgeries by anti-abortion people. We need to get rid of the patronising rule that you have to wait 3 days between having decided you want to terminate the pregnancy and being allowed to access the medications.
By the system, by the man.
Yeah, so all those things need more progress, but there is always the danger of slipping back. There is always, with complacency.
I'm going to go back because I think, you said about looking at the woman on, I would always say I'm non-judgmental, and in the work I do, I have to be non-judgmental. But of course I judge, I mean, I look at, I do that thing as well. I'd look at blokes and I'd say, is there no mirror in his gaff or something? Just stupid little things like that. And I know that is the beginning of it. And I know, there's a young person that I know, a young woman who she wanted an apprenticeship in plumbing, and she went out on a site and she had to leave. She was just absolutely, the stuff, I wouldn't even say it, the stuff. She was absolutely abused on sites, just total misogynistic stuff.
And was there no kind of foreman or someone, or forewoman, but probably a foreman?
When she complained, then it got worse. Then it got that when she was going home on the bus, she was getting abused.
It's an interesting thing. I had a conversation with a few women in my life recently, and they were just saying, we're in that state of constant fear, and it's generally from men. And one of the women said, all of the people who abused me in my life were men. And I was nearly fucking crying, like, you know what I mean? Going, that's powerful. And I remember being I called a meeting in Ballymun prior to Apollo House, and I asked the people in the room, I didn't tell them, like, I have this thing that I'm looking to do about homelessness, and I didn't tell anybody. I just said, what's the issue for you? And it was like the who's who of the Irish activist kind of scene, and one of the girls was there, and she said to the men, what do you think about when you're walking down Grafton Street at 2:00 in the morning? And I went, where's the next club, or any chance we could get a bite to eat, or, you know, anybody we could like, hang out and buzz off.
We're still selling booze.
Yeah. And she said, well, what us women, or what she thinks is that man over there going to attack me? Am I going to go around this corner and I'm going to run into stuff? Is somebody going to bleed and pick me up and throw me fucking somewhere? You know what I mean? And I said, I've never had that perspective in my life. I've never had that experience in my life. You know what I mean? I just thought it was a powerful wake-up call for me as a man. And I had prided myself on being, you know, a really nice man and strong and good in the community and really, you know, supportive of women's rights and all that type of stuff. And it was just like a whole blind spot that I just got revealed to me straight away.
And that's from, you know, as soon as a girl starts to move into adolescence, she has to learn that, you know.
You've done that with your hands, like the boobs thing or something?
Yeah, but as soon as, you know, but like my daughter's now 21, but she used to go to school, and she said that secondary school, it would be par for the course going down the corridors that you'd get your bum grabbed or your boobs grabbed, or you know, there was one girl in her class, young woman, I suppose, she was 16, around that age, and her nickname was, I think, 38D among the lads. That was in South Dublin 5-6 years ago, you know. So as soon as a girl moves into adolescence, she has to start to learn, you know, my body could make me not safe.
What I find there, like Dane having that conversation with women, I have that conversation with men all the time. So I find what happens is, if I was to tell that story, what are you thinking about walking down Grafton Street, and the woman is saying, I'm thinking about, is that man going to attack me? 9 times out of 10, blokes will say back to me, yeah, but I was nearly attacked in a chipper a few weeks ago, or something like that. They don't think about what I'm talking about. They don't think what is going on in society that women are experiencing that. The first thing that seems to always happen is defend. Yeah, but I was, you know, I got a dig in the chipper, or I got, you know, a point glass thrown at me or something. So everybody's in danger. Not true. It's a whole, you know, it's a different thing. But
yeah, like men are very vulnerable to random attacks. We saw what happened with that tourist, you know, and like, so men, like I have a son now who's 13. I won't be worried about him. Yeah. You know,
there is a difference.
There's a power difference.
For women, it's all men all the time where the potential thing is coming from. For men, it's occasionally once a year or 5 times in my life or whatever. And I know there are cases on either end where, no, you know, I'm a man who probably got boxed in the face by another man twice in my life because I'm 6 foot and I'm a ballymunner and I'm well able to take care of myself. And then I know other guys who were like, their head was stood on. So there are extremes, but for most women, most of the time, what they're thinking or what the reality is, they're being objectiquified, they're being wolf whistles.
And we are, and it's a long time since I was wolf whistled now. I have to
hold
on. No, particularly, you know, from, as I say, from 15 up to kind of 35, there's 20 years where you are a fair game kind of thing, you know, for the wolf whistling and just being made feel uncomfortable on the streets, you know, and it's just, you are kind of almost bracing yourself. You're kind of going, well, will I smile? Will I ignore? Will I, you know, and you're having to think about how you're going to react. But
it's constant. It's like a constant hypervigilance.
Yeah, constant hypervigilance.
That's not fucking healthy.
No, and I suppose the difference is, because you're saying it's for women all the time and men less so. Like it's the strength difference, you know, it's the power difference. So if a woman gets jumped, she's probably very unlikely to be able to defend herself effectively. Whereas your average man, I think, would probably go, I could probably box back and get away. You know, there's, you know, if it was to happen. So there's that fear that there's nothing I'll be able to do about it.
So a couple of years ago, I was trying to get this program off the ground with an MMA coach in Ballymun. His name is Owen Roddy. And it was free jiu-jitsu lessons for women. Part of jiu-jitsu is you're on your back most of the time. And it's that position where if you were attacked by a man, you would be on your back and he would be trying to straddle you. The dominant position there is when you're on your back. That's where all the control is. And I just thought if more women had that in their toolbox, the power dynamic would change.
Yeah. And then the thing is, well, why should women have to have,
That's
why should women have to do that? I mean, there is a reality, but, there is also, so the immediate reality is how to defend yourself.
The ideal is that they don't, but we're not in the ideal. If we were in the ideal, we wouldn't be having the conversation. You know what I mean? So let's...
And we do have to remember that most men are good. Why do women
have to change? Why does men not have to change?
Well, it's like that self-defense thing. You know what I mean? Self-defense is about self-defense. You can be active in that yourself rather than passive and waiting for the other side to change. You can have agency in it.
No, I get what you're saying, and I understand, reality versus the ideal, but I do think we always seem to talk to women about, when it's about attacks on women. Like, I remember the woman who went for a run, was attacked.
Yeah, Ashley Murphy.
The amount of women that said, well, the clothes that they're wearing was skin. I was just like, what is going on? Like, this is a man's issue that men are randomly going out attacking people. Why is it that a woman has to change what she wears going out for a run to stop attacks? Like, it has to be, the work has to be done with men. We have to
acknowledge that 99%, I hope it's 99% of men are really good, are great, are, great dads, great brothers.
I think so.
And I think what we have to, I would feel that, with the culture needs to change so that rather than it being cool to wolf whistle or to be cool to kind of like say, would you look at her, all that kind of bravado that goes on, particularly among kind of young teenage and early 20s men, is that it becomes cool to go, that's not cool, man. Just don't talk about it. That could be your sister. The bystander intervention says no.
I was with a group of men yesterday having a coffee, and there was like a window looking out on the street, and there was a woman walking past, and the eyes, my back was to her, and the eyes went to her, and I was turned around to see what it was, and I went, no, I'm all right, lads, I'm all right. And then I just went back to what I was doing and kind of diffused it that way. Not engaging with the whole oogling or objectification or, looking at her bum or looking at her boobs, and just went back to what I was doing going. And it kind of like took the excitement out of it for them a little bit. Yeah. Because they get it, for whatever reason, between the legs, men get excited when they see boobs and bums and walking down the roads, It's like this lady is presenting herself for everybody to...
And that's okay to get a little bit excited, but just keep it to yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't have to, be in the woman's kind of making her aware and uncomfortable that you're, because it's not harmless. It's not harmless for the particularly young, teenage girls and all who just want to go out and are trying to figure out who they are and how they feel about the world and everything. And to have this kind of, it's mildly kind of violent, on them all the time.
That young woman that's working on the building site, she was groped. She was
God.
And
she'd have a case.
Oh, but look.
I know.
I'm not complaining, but I was never groped. I've never been groped. Unless I grope myself. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Unless, you're in a pub and it's 2:00 in the morning and everyone's drunk and there's late, you know what I mean? That type of thing. But I just don't have that frame of reference.
Yeah. So your bodily integrity is, safe.
Yeah. Nobody has penetrated that barrier that is my energy circle or whatever with their hands to grab a bit of me.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. That must be, oh my God.
I mean, it's mad. Like you said about
you just get used to it.
No, Kitty.
But you do, I'm just saying that's how terrible it is, and how it's becomes normalised. And
but that's what you're saying about your daughter walking through the corridor and the accepted thing is nearly that you get a tap or you get a slap or you get a grow. That is... Just when you actually
and these
think
are children.
About it,
legally, these are children.
When you think about it and you actually process it, it's like...
In school.
It's mad.
So you can imagine what it's like in Coppers, or we shouldn't, poor old Coppers. I'm sure it's a fabulous place. Even the name Coppers, Copperfield and,
I always associate it with Garda, like coppers.
Oh, maybe. I always associate
that's where all the coppers go.
Okay. Maybe.
Oh, I never thought of that. And
because it's down the road from Harcourt Square. Or Harcourt.
You were talking about the other place that used to be...
No, I'm talking about Coppers on Carrick Street.
There used to be that place at Parnell Street, the Strip Club.
Oh, yeah. What was that called? Stringfellows.
That didn't last long, dear.
No, it didn't last long. Because people were going, hold on a minute here. I'm putting one on one together and coming up with 5. There's women walking in there and now their job is to be paid to be objectified by men.
It doesn't really work in Ireland. I don't know why, and I can't.
Strip clubs,
it's just that kind of thing.
There
like,
are lap dancing clubs still, aren't there?
Did you say slap dancing?
Lap dancing.
No, you went slap dancing.
Yeah, but that's be good.
No, but come here, like lap dancing, even it's not a big thing. Like, you know, there was a place called Angels, I remember years ago.
And Le Pellos, wasn't there?
Le Pellos is still there.
Is it?
Yeah,
it's on there at the junction of Dame Street. And
it doesn't exactly announce itself. You'd need to know it was there. I think there's a little sign. But
don't think it needs to.
If you go to London, it's there. If you go to Amsterdam, it's there. Anywhere in Germany, it's there. It doesn't ever really take off here for some reason. I don't know what that's about. Like I remember I watched that Stringfellows thing. I watched it and I was thinking, what's this about? Like, is this about Catholicism?
Yeah.
Or is it about fair? Is it fair? Is it people are saying, no, we're not having women going in there doing that. That's not fair. Or what is it like? You know what I mean? Is it...
There probably was a little bit of a protective factor with the Catholicism. You know, it has a very patronising view of women, the Catholic Church, but it does have a kind of like, there's things that are appropriate for women to do, probably more than the way to look. You know, but there was definitely, the people who were protesting outside Stringfellows when it opened were kind of elderly local residents mainly. You know, it wasn't actually the National Women's Council, I don't think, or, you know, the people who would be now, you know, the Alva Smiths and all, you know, the repealers. It was elderly local women. And I think, they just, I don't know if they tried to open now, maybe they might have more success. I don't know. So. Probably not.
I don't think so.
Cable Street is that street, isn't it? Like they just recently opened a bakery there that does like rude cakes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Actually, that's like chocolate Mickeys, is it?
Chocolate Mickeys, all that slap and tickle stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? I just, as you were saying there, people came out to protect the women. What was going on in my head was all the stuff about the asylum seekers, because a lot of it in this community was, they're here to attack our women. Yeah. Let's protect our women. Yeah. And it's a similar thing. But then at exactly the same time, the women, as you're attesting to, are under constant threat here anyway. Yeah. There's a hypervigilance. They're being groped. They're being wolf whistled. So call me mental, but that's a glaring kind of contradiction, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. And that is still the thing you hear. Like I was up in Ballybrack there a couple of evenings ago where they're protesting against the rumours that there were going to be asylum seekers moved into a former apartment block and GP surgery there in Ballybrack Village. As it happens, I think if anyone goes in there, it'll be Ukrainian families. That's what the Department of Children are saying.
The white ones.
The white ones, the women and children, yeah. And they seem to be much more acceptable to communities than the brown men.
Brown men or white women. Whoa.
Yeah, people up there were talking about unvetted military-age males, which seems to have just become, But
that's the far right stuff, isn't it?
A brand now.
When you say people, and then Sparky comes in with, that is a specific... It's a
branding
trope from the far right.
It's an algorithm, really. Like, I've had a lot of experience with the far right, okay?
Lucky you.
Man, I swear, I'd rather not, to be honest, but I can't stand it. Like, I just don't. So at the minute, I'm speaking to a guy who has been absolutely just algorithmed into the biggest rabbit hole ever, right? And even when you do that reality versus whatever versus rumors, rabbit hole, it will still return to the algorithm,
Well, when you present the facts, that's lies and conspiracy. That's people say, oh, that's just mainstream media saying that.
Oh yeah. That one during COVID. Sorry, do your research.
Do you remember that in bold capitals? No, but I was actually showing him. I was saying, do you remember the experience we had on this? And he go, yeah. And I said, well, that's that. That's not.
You were giving him a comparable
reality.
Yeah.
Like for instance, right? We were out having dinner one night, and this older woman says, I don't like going into town anymore. It's full of blacks. And I was like, what? And I said, what about, and I named 5 black people that she knew. And she was like, oh, they're okay. And I was like, so who are you talking about? And when she actually worked it out, she was getting it from the newspaper. She was picking it up from the newspaper. I was like, where is this coming from? Is it coming from your husband? Is it coming from your kids? Is it coming from wherever? Like, and she said, no, it's coming from the newspaper. That's what she was getting.
I'd love to know which newspaper.
I don't want
to say it. I don't want to say it on the podcast, but it's not yours.
But it's probably, and I don't want to sound like, yeah, right, that's coming from a newspaper. I'm wondering, is it coming from Facebook? And because how many people are buying newspapers anymore? Yeah. You know, it's articles that have been screenshot or whatever, and then are shared around Facebook, and you'd wonder which
this woman had the paper delivered to the house every day and stopped having it delivered to the house every day, because what she was saying is that all the court stuff was all foreign names, all the all
it's
that.
Not.
No, I know that, but that's what was reported.
What's that thing? Confirmation bias is where
it's you see one Eastern European name and you see 7 Irish names who have been involved in, domestic violence or robberies or fraud or whatever. Yeah. But you remember the one Eastern European name and say, it's full of Eastern European.
It stands out, but we also have, there's like our thinking, there's confirmation bias, all this type of stuff. Like if 1,000 people say Kitty Holland is an amazing journalist, and then one of them says, no, she's a fucking EJ. You'll remember that one.
Yeah.
I was out swimming. I brought a couple of guys who are in Balsaskin Lane.
The asylum seeker reception centre.
I call them by their name now rather than the label, because I think the label is fucking, it just denigrates them or something like that. So I send them a message. Anyone want to go? One of the lads, 2 girls come out, and we have the crack in the car. We're playing Michael Jackson, we're playing rave music, we're playing African music, we're just having the crack.
Imagine what was happening to those poor people.
They're live streaming to the Congo.
They're at the coming over, right? They're going through all kinds of, bad stuff to get here, right? All, paperwork, and then ending up in an asylum centre up at the back road of nowhere, right? At the, over the M50 in, what are they, Portakabins or something like that, right? And then somebody says, oh yeah, we go out for the day, and they get into a car with him, right? And he's doing breakdancing while he's driving, like, you know what I mean? And they're kind of going, what?
Why did I come here?
What's going
on? On a side note, I find they're all into their phones. Like the 2 girls in the back of the car and Choco, who's beside me. He's like a music artist from the Congo, and he's beside me, and they're on their phones constantly, sharing their new life.
Yeah.
And I said to her, one of the girls, what's it like here? And she said, and this phrase could be hijacked, but she said, this is the dream. She goes, do you realise where we came from? Do you realise what? And we're the lucky ones. We're the ones whose families had a few quid.
I know.
And now we're coming here. This is the dream. And we're looking at them like these are the worst black people that have ever stepped onto this island. But anyway, so we're out at the beach, and the girls are over on the rocks taking photographs, and me and Choco are jumping in, we're having the crack, and it just blows me mind. This is his first time in the sea, anywhere. He jumps straight in, and he just jumps up and he screams, and it's just this guttural scream from the bottom of his fucking body. Like this. And I'm fucking, this is amazing.
That was the cold day, and he nearly died.
He probably did nearly die, but he was also at the exactly the same time he was alive. Yeah. So I'm there with a couple of my mates, a couple of Ballymun heads, and they're all dancing with him and, you know what I mean, taking photographs. And I went over to one of my mates and I said, they're the demons, they're the baddies,
Who are the baddies?
The black guys.
Yeah.
I was kind of
this is your friend said?
Yeah, I said
ironic.
it to him.
Okay.
Yeah, ironically, I was going, they're the boogeyman. And he goes, yeah, I know. And he goes, what I find hard is when there's a group of them, when there's 10 of them, then I feel threatened. When they're there as 1 or 2, or you know what I mean? But when I see a group of them, the threat comes in. That's not got to do with that group of people. That's got to do with us. That's our shit.
Yeah. Well, just like, I mean, you can imagine people would feel a bit intimidated because it's people who you don't know anything about them, and you don't know, like, it could be 10 people from Sicily, or from, Eastern Europe.
But we're not threatened by 10 people from Sicily.
But you might feel like, what are they here for and what are their intentions?
There's 50 students on the top of a 40 going out to swords.
Yeah.
I mean?
Exactly.
Students.
But it happens.
Yeah.
With
Well, I find them
do
intimidation.
Do you?
Well, yeah. It's just because it's unsettling. I don't find it intimidating, but it is unsettling. If there's a group of people you don't know anything about, and
they're all
you're on your own. Yeah, and they're all you know.
Come here, I would have grown up with it. I would have grown up that if there was 10 travellers coming towards you, you would have went, oh my God, I'm in trouble. And that
if you saw 10 businessmen from Blackrock, you'd feel intimidated, wouldn't you?
Well,
do you know what I mean?
It's, well, that's funny to say that.
The white-collar crime. The white-collar crime.
Well,
they're about to commit.
I know, but that's not the narrative. Like, I mean, I think there's a couple of things that had to come up for me there while we were talking. One is, you know, you have the guy there who's going, you know, when I see a group of them, that kind of stuff. So I remember seeing Roma Gypsies for the first time in Dublin, and I had a big reaction, you know. And myself and Dean would have been at all the racist stuff, you know, but just the difference and my head got warped by it, like, you know what I mean? And what I had to do then was I had to go and meet Roma people. I had to kind of go and just see what was going on. And once I did, I was that thing switched off. But I still have it. It's still there. It exists inside me, that negative thing about others, right? And I mean, I had it all my life about Southsiders. You know, I had this thing that
posh fuckers.
If you went swimming in the sea on the north side, it'd be grand. But you went over to the 40-foot and people like we'd say hello to everybody and people would be like, I'm sure they're going, who's these tech cases? But over there, like, you say hello to people and they just completely blank you, like, you know.
A mate of mine can't do Dunleary Pier. It freaks him out. Like, it's where he gets like weird anxiety going, all these posh fuckers.
Well, it's people who you're not familiar with, isn't it? Like, it's even, I mean, I know that the young woman you were talking about in the building site really did have a terrible time but she was out of her comfort zone, you know. And you hear about kind of people from like really deprived working class areas going to Trinity, you know, and feeling like a complete Trinity College and through the Access programme. And one of the things that they feel is very out of their comfort zone, you know, threatened, intimidated, all those things.
I think it's probably more than like out of their comfort zone, imposter syndrome. I think there could be also genuine that they're being treated differently or looked down upon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not just one side, it's not just how they're thinking or feeling, it's an actual thing. It's not just a woman walking past a building site feeling intimidated. There's actual intimidation as well.
Yeah.
But there's also tribes. Like, I think we're tribal, you know, humans are tribal. And I think, so my tribe is Northsiders, you know, and that kind of the crack and, you know, the fresh batch and all that stuff, right? That's my thing, like, you know. So when I'm out of my comfort zone, when I see, like, I was over in the 40-foot last week and there was a group of lads there and I was trying to talk to them and they just when they heard the accent, I don't know what it was, but they didn't connect. And then there was a couple of other lads there who were from a housing estate not far from there, like, you know. They were having the crack then, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that was,
You're a chav.
I was a chav, yeah. So
but
I was able to
in fairness to the posh kids, they probably felt uncomfortable as well, you know. Yeah. So it's not like that they kind of went, you know, don't. Yeah. Maybe they did. They're kind of like, don't. But there would also be a lack of kind of like, oh, I just don't know how to relate.
Yeah.
You know, because
so
I
find it's all in our heads. And what I do, because my tribe is everybody. Okay? I have the privilege of that perspective. For some reason, that's where I'm at now. My tribe is absolutely fucking everybody. Posh, black, white, disabled, gay, trans, African, fucking whatever. Because I just see the beauty in we're fucking all this on this rock going through the universe.
And I suppose I'm privileged as well because through my work, you know, I have to, you know, I meet everybody as well, or whether I'm meeting, you know, someone who works in government, you know, high up in a government department or a TD or a politician, they're meeting travellers, meeting, you know, trans people, asylum seekers, everyone. And I do kind of think, you know, if you just meet people, not even kind of meet people where they're at, because then that's assuming that you're going to make a judgment about where they're at, but just be yourself, you know, just be yourself and expect them to be themselves and you'll be grand. Like we all basically have like the same hopes and dreams.
That's kind of like the lesson. We are, as much as we think we're all different, and we are different, there are differences, absolutely, but we're all the fucking same.
Yeah.
Every single one of us, we're all the same. We're all uniquely the same.
And we all have fears and hopes. And
that's the thing I'm talking about. So there's a proviso in that, right, for me, because there is the thing that existed for me, who would be totally the same as you, my tribe as everybody, but then I did get caught. I got caught on the 40-foot. I'm kind of going, these snobby fuckers, like, you know. So I'm caught, right? Or the Roma Gypsy or whatever it is. So I think you also have to be aware of the fear that's in us. We have, you know, because we're I think there's a lot of fear in this. And then the other thing is then, what about the fascists? They're not in my tribe. I don't want any of them in my tribe. I don't want any of them in my friends group. And so I'm not all encompassing.
Or the rapists or the murderers. You know what I mean? There's loads. For me, there's enough things for me to kick people out of the tribe that to be just me left.
Yeah, but you know what? Even the rapists and the murderers, you see some of the people you see getting sentenced for the most horrific crimes. You go back into their childhoods and you go, there was a good kid there once upon a time who's had, like if you look at some of the, I'm not going to name any of the crimes now because there's victims who've had horrible experiences, but like you could think of some of the sentences that have gone down in the last 10 years and you just think you hear about the childhoods they had and you just think they were acting out of fear, anger, rage at what happened to them, what they witnessed their mothers may be going through, and that was put into them, you know, and there has to be, I feel there has to be compassion even for people who commit. Now, I don't feel there has to be compassion for the fascists. I think they intentionally have made a decision to be nasty, divisive, horrible people, and they have made a career out of it, and they want other people to follow them and to manipulate them and to play on their fears.
But that guy in the UK who came out, who was a fascist, who there was a film made about.
Stephen Graham was in it, yeah.
Stephen Graham.
Walk In or something like that.
He is kind of like, yeah, but hold on, even behind my active decision to do it, there's a backstory here. Yeah. This kind of stuff happened. And if no matter what you're convicted of in court, there's like, Your Honour, please take into consideration my client's life, my client's history. And that's true for everybody.
Yeah.
And I was watching the case there yesterday, and it was an abuse thing, like, you know, and the guy got 2 years, and it was nearly like because he was from a middle class kind of nice background, you know what I mean, that he didn't get the 10 years he was supposed to get, like, you know. Yeah. I was watching that, like, and I was thinking there is that elitist sentencing thing, you know, going on. When you were speaking there, I was thinking, right, so that person you're talking about, right, that person who has murdered or has committed, you know, terrible crimes, they were abused and neglected and all that kind of stuff when they were kids, and there was no supports or services there, right? That is happening now, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We've the social workers, all those kind of things gone, right? You have kids now in hotels again, and, you know, and then the other thing we don't have is we don't have any guards. Like, one thing that we're witnessing over the last month is serious crime being committed. Like in this area, right, there is not one guard. There's like, if you went to the commissioner and said, give us one.
But there's a guard station.
There's a guard station, but it's empty.
There.
We were talking about it last week. We don't only have a guard station, Kitty. We have a regional guard station.
Now, I'm sure there's guards in there.
That's the station for the region.
Yeah, I'm sure there's guards in there doing stuff at the airport and that, and they'll walk past you if you went in.
And from the commissioner, he was saying the other day that they're all on these kind of teams. You know what I mean? They're all doing the white collar crime stuff or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they're not on the desk, and people have, like, in this area, there's a lot of, you know, there's crimes, there's car crime, and, you know, motorbikes being stolen and all that kind of stuff. There's those kind of crimes going on, and people are ringing the guards and there's just no response. I know somebody who works in the park, and there was a fella acting really suspicious in the playground, and loads of people rang the guards. Yeah, we'd be down.
Was he brown?
And it's just like,
did you hear what she said?
What's it?
Was he brown?
No. Okay. He was actually, no, he was.
No, because that's white. What you hear all the time.
No.
There was
white. He's white, and he was wearing. Sorry, this is not funny, but he was wearing a high vis. So that's.
Okay.
That's my friend's nickname for him. High Vis was in the park again today. And I was like, what? And he was saying, yeah, but the guards don't show up. And then it was actually funny, right? I was driving for work the other day, and I come up the road and I seen a guard car, and I was just like, oh, that's what they look like. It's actually that, like, where I live, there used to be a checkpoint all the time, like, you know, and, you know, it was for, you'd see cars getting seized and all that. I haven't seen it.
So I don't.
But they can't recruit guards. You know, there's all
that's
these.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think it's just this community or working class communities or whatever.
Well, there's no guards in Rathmines or Ranelagh either. You know, there's no Dublin 6.
I disagree.
But there might be more need for them here because of poverty, because of trauma, because of everything.
Because of murders.
There is more, there's more vulnerability to sort of antisocial behaviour and crime. So there probably is more there's more need for the white collar crime investigators in Dublin 6, but there's probably more need for guards on the beat.
And that's what they said they were going to do, that they were going to look at the numbers that they had and look at, so like in Ballymun, there was a lot of murders, and there hasn't been this year, thank God, but there was a lot of murders, but there was no guards. Like when the murder happened, there'd be 20 guards, and there'd be tape everywhere, and there'd be all kinds of helicopters and all kinds of stuff. You're like, why do they need a helicopter now? Like,
after the fact, after the horse is bolted. What did you disagree with me there? Because I said something and you disagreed.
No, you said that there's no guards, full stop, or whatever, and that they're not, like when you pass the Malahide station, which we do a lot because we're swimming out that way, there's 6 cars parked outside.
Right, okay.
There's not 6 cars in Ballymun. There's not 1 car in Ballymun. So there is, and the thing is, if you wanted to go out into the plaza there now and sell crack, heroin, weed, speed, ecstasy, and any of that kind of stuff, openly in front of cameras and all that kind of stuff, nobody'll stop you. If you want to
get on to fluff the numbers, I'm the fluff the numbers person. I'm the one to go, there was 20,000 of us. So if you're saying that, I'm believing you.
If I went out there now and got onto a big high-powered scrambler, right, and went up the road on the back wheel with no helmet on, nobody come next to near me.
There'll probably be a crowd of people going, yay! But because it's a bit of crack.
Oh, it breaks the monotony. Like, but the other thing then is, if I don't put tax on the car. Recently, a guy knocked on my door asking me for a TV license. And I'm like, what is this? Like, there is the money there to pay a guy to go looking for TV licenses, but there's nobody stopping people from selling crack or people with guns or any of that kind of stuff, which seems to be just a free-for-all.
But they're obviously not paying guards enough, because they can't. They
gave them plenty of that Joe Biden money.
Jim O'Callaghan, the Fianna Fáil justice person who's in government, but he was on the radio this morning talking about the fact that they have the same number of guards now as we had 14 years ago in Ireland, and the population has just grown hugely, dramatically. But apparently once you hit 62 in the guards, you have to retire. No, 60. Right. You have to retire. So all that kind of expertise and everything is gone. Yeah. And you cannot join the guards if you're older than 35.
That's mad, isn't it?
So there's plenty of people, as Jim O'Callaghan was pointing out, over 35, 36, 37, sitting in boring jobs who would love to suddenly...
Is it kind of like the way the government and Dublin City Council don't build houses anymore? Is that where we're going?
Well, they're obviously, there's pay issues, there's overwork issues, I think, because the ones who are there are having to work. Housing issues, they probably can't afford housing. Yeah. And then they're being made retire and you can't join if you're older than 35. And there's also
another thing, because we have a friend who's a guard, and I was talking to him the other day, we were swimming with him, and I asked him, and he said in the ones that were recruited recently, 100 of them are gone to Australia. So they're trained here, and then the Australian government
comes and gets them.
So you imagine you're young, imagine you're 21, you have your guard's license or whatever it is, right? And you're fully trained, and then somebody says you come down to Australia for a couple of years.
So that's where Coppers is relocated to, probably.
You haven't
it's in Melbourne.
Coppers get
it's in Melbourne.
No, it's all the nurses are there, all the coppers are there, all the teachers are there.
They're going to set up a new nightclub. It's called Kitty's. Deadly. Let's wrap it up.
Right, thanks.
Kitty, thanks for coming out.
Yeah, no problem. And let us know if there's
a couple of laughs and a couple of tears.
Stuff going on. Yeah. No, if I start talking about Star Dust, I get very. So I have to actually be really careful about where I go, because I will just start blubbing. It's so.
I don't mind crying. I've learned that crying for me is the same as laughing, as in it's very.
No, but
healthy.
I will actually won't be able to speak. I'll have to go off and go to the bathroom. And
it won't be a podcast.
Yeah, no, because it's just, and the dignity of the families. It was just such a privilege to be there listening to those pen portraits. We were all privileged that they got up and did that for us.
When you look at all those campaigns that people Bloody Sunday, Stardust, all those campaigns that people just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, knocking on doors, and we do get somewhere. With marriage equality, and with, repeal.
Hillsborough.
When we push and keep pushing and just fair play to all those people who don't stop.
Yeah. But it's important to say things like Bloody Sunday. Like Bloody Sunday's not over. They still haven't got justice. That's not done. But they've never seen a paratrooper in the dock paying for feckin' murdering those 13
what
people.
What I'm saying is that they're still pushing.
They are still pushing, but some aren't,
See how this episode does, and we might come back and do a part 2 and cover some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, this is just getting comfortable with each other in the space, talking about stuff. And I think now we have that. Let's play around with it. Episode 5, Fresh Batch. Thanks very much. See you soon.
Here, fuck off, will you? Fresh, yeah?